You're listening to TFM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. Well, hello and welcome to TFM's local watering hole. Just so excited to be here today. And Christy, are you? I don't. Hold on. Let me text her and see if she's gonna show up. Sorry guys, I figured she would already be here. There's just a lot of blue here where I've tried to get in touch with her and. Oh, wait, three dots. Chrissy?
You texted me 11 times in 2 days?
I mean, emojis don't count.
Yes, they do.
Dang it. Oh, my gosh. Well, we are going to have a blast today. We're going to be talking about a new movie that's just showed up not too long ago on Apple TV. Called Ghosted, starring Chris Evans and Ana de Armas. Before we reach that, just always, we love the fact that you're listening. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And we would also like it if you would do a few things for us that could really help us out big time. One, if you like the show and you like what we do, please make sure you're subscribed and wherever you're listening to this podcast. And that means you'll get the podcast as soon as it drops. And of course, we'll have the bonus shows that'll be coming to you as well. And we would really appreciate it if you would follow us over on Twitter. We've got our own handle at the 602 Club. We're also on Instagram at the 602 Club TFM. You can also share our shows with people. One of the best ways for a podcast to grow is word of mouth, as well as social media word of mouth. So if you like the show, share it with people, retweet us and stuff like that. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. We're the entire network. We've got a listeners-only discussion group there on Facebook that you can join. It's called the Babel Conference. You could talk to listeners from all over the world about the different shows that are happening here. You can also find us online at Trek.fm. That's our website where every single show that we've got going on is housed, and you can see all that we've got. And also, we would really appreciate if you would go over to Patreon. That allows you to be able to support the network and make sure that all of these podcasts that we do here on the network keep coming to you each and every week. And to do that, you'd want to go over to patreon.com/TrekFM. So, Christy, before we even dive into the movie, I thought that this was really interesting that this was a film that was not only going to star Chris Evans, but it was also going to star Scarlett Johansson. And of course, you know, we all knew that they had great rapport because we've seen them together in the Avengers films. You know, I especially think of just how good they were together in Winter Soldier. And so she had to back out, though, because she had a previous commitment that she, created a scheduling conflict. So they brought in Ana de Armas. So I wanted to ask you, before we even kind of dove into the film, now that we've seen this, do you feel as though that's a missed opportunity to where you feel like the film might have been even better than it was, not giving away what we thought of the movie, but just could have been an even better film if it had been, those two together?
I think with this, the casting choices, I love both of them, but you needed one or the other. I think that together, they just don't have the chemistry that either one of them have had as good with other actors. So I kind of missed having either Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson together or Ana de Armas and, Daniel Craig. Yeah. But just the two of them together, it just felt like brother and sister for me. And so trying to make that the romance side really come to life in this movie between Anna de Armas and Chris Evans felt awkward for me. But what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I didn't know this until after we watched the movie, my wife and I together. And, you know, Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson, I think, have already proven the fact that they have incredible chemistry together. And, you know, there was, I think, especially, I think, you know, Winter Soldier just showed how much palpable kind of like sexual tension that they could have in the room together, which is really important. And so I don't dislike Chris Evans and Anna de Armas together, but I don't know if it's the same type of chemistry that we already know that Scarlett Johansson and Chris Evans have. Mm-hmm. You know, I can understand as to why they cast Anna de Armas in the film because of, you know, what we had seen her be able to do in No Time to Die. And of course, you know, she also was in The Gray Man, you know, and she's about to be in Ballerina. So, I mean, she's definitely got the ability to pull off the action vibe that you want, as well as I think she has the ability to do the type of role that they needed her here, where she's fun, no nonsense, can make and I think pull off the quips that you'd want, and everything with ease. You know, I think she has all of that, but I wasn't quite in the place, I think, where you are, where it felt more like brother and sister. But knowing, I think it kind of hurts retrospectively to know that they wanted Scarlett Johansson for this role. Mm-hmm. And so, but yeah, I guess, you know, talking just about Chris Evans then and Anna de Armas together, did it work well enough for you? Did you like it at all? Or was it completely this thing where you weren't buying what they were trying to sell you?
I wasn't buying it. But I mean, like I said, that's why I wanted to make it clear. It's not that I dislike either one of them. I think it's just the two of them together. It just feels like it's not earned, or something is missing. It was just weird for me. It felt like there were people in the room going, "Oh, the sexual tension, you can feel it." And I'm going, "Can you?"
Yeah, I could definitely understand what you're saying. I still don't think, for me, it was
as bad.
Yeah, I don't think it is quite as not there as what you're thinking, or feeling. But I also agree with you that it did feel almost like forced, in the sense that, yeah, everybody keeps talking about it, and instead of like us just feeling it, it almost feels like it might have been better if they just hadn't had the joke repeatedly. You guys need to get a room, you know?
Right. Yeah.
I think if they had just let it build kind of more organically, you know, that might have been, that might have actually worked better than what we get, which is, like you said, we're kind of told, it seems like every 10 minutes, especially in the first third of the film, that they need to get a room, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I agree with you. Do you think that would have helped at all? Do you feel like you might have been able to buy it more if people weren't trying to tell you what you should be feeling?
Maybe. I mean, it wouldn't have made a huge difference for me. I think still ultimately it just could have been better, because it seems like you kind of felt the same way, but not quite as far on that end as I did.
Yeah, yeah. And a spectrum. I think you're farther along on the spectrum of it, like, not working. I feel like I'm somewhere more in the middle, where it's like it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't like the best I've ever seen.
Yeah. And then the other thing I just wanted to add that didn't help it was leaning into the joke too much, which even seemed to go that way with some of the cinematography choices. I don't know what you thought of the scene where they're finally, you know, at her place together, but it seemed a little over the top intentionally. the amount of times that they filmed with a sheet flowing in the wind or something in the love scene.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wasn't even really thinking about that, but I can totally get where if for you, the thought that these two people might actually want to go to bed together, right, is not working for you, then I can totally see why too you're like obsessing about the sheet at the moment when they're in bed instead of being like, oh, isn't that cute,
Yeah.
No, I 100% hear what you're saying, and I don't really think that we're all that far off either from one another, and I do think it is sad that Scarlett Johansson was not able to do this, because I think what they wanted would have worked gangbusters, of course, because we've already seen it work, right? And you could tell that's the reason that they had tried to put these two in the film in the first place, because they had seen what had happened there, and they basically, I think, wanted to do that in some ways. They wanted to have this like all shucks everyday guy kind of like get involved with a super spy, right? And that's exactly what Captain America and Black Widow are. And so this and it's even the same people. So, but
yeah,
they don't get that. And yeah, I don't think that they quite pull it off the way that you would want. And that's too bad. Because like you, I like both of these people,
Yeah.
And I've liked pretty much most of the things I've seen them in. So, what's crazy too is usually regardless of whether I like the movie or not, I usually like them, and so that's. Yeah, when you put them together like this, it's kind of frustrating that it doesn't get the fireworks that you want in the film. And I was kind of interested about this with you, because in many ways this movie is about these people being two sides of the same coin. You have Cole and you have Sadie, and I thought it was interesting casting him as the kind of like, and I made the joke, the Sea of Blue guy, where he just texts too much, he kind of comes on too strong, too fast, he's too needy, he kind of seems to be this person who wants people to complete him. He almost seems like one of those people who's just like in the idea of being in love, like he's in love with the idea of love, and so that always kind of pushes people away. And so I thought it was interesting to have him be that character, because I think regardless of how I felt about them together, I think Chris Evans actually pulled off that character really well. And he felt pretty real in that sense, because, I especially in my younger days tended to be more of that type of person in general, which was like, seeing the one everywhere.
No, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head with, he is clearly someone who is in love with the idea of love, that he romanticizes everything, and he's a little bit overkill with the amount of communication and, what people would interpret as neediness or whatever, which whether it's a man or a woman doing that, to me would turn someone off. It's like, especially when you first start dating someone, it's like you want to be a little bit aloof, because if you come on too strong, then the other person is like, whoa, I don't want to marry you tomorrow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that he definitely embodied that really well. Like he's done with any character where he's very, like supposed to be very green. And he's just trying to make something happen, and you feel bad for him because he is genuine, but he just needs to calm down a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that's 100% right. And it's also because this character becomes one of those people who is so obsessed with this idea of just kind of finding the one, he's not really willing to take on the risks and be working on himself, and, he comes across as though he wants to have somebody basically come in and make his life complete, save him. And it's like, there's so much more to life than just, romantic relationships. And so I think that's a really interesting thing to kind of see on screen, because, I think a lot of people kind of ended up in this position. And so, they do a good job with kind of showing, I think, this trope through this character. And then, they have his opposite, which is Sadie. And she's kind of somebody who, she's got no time for romance, or giving up anything for another person. She's, his antithesis, everything kind of has to fit into her time and be done her way. And there's never going to be a point in her life where anyone is going to be really any kind of important to her. And, I thought, again, on the other side, regardless of how they fit together, I thought, Anna Darmus did a pretty good job of being able to play that part of the story as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that she, obviously, we both agree, is a great actress. And then she came in and really embodied this character that's, you can tell from the get-go with that initial scene in her car that something is troubling her, and she doesn't really get into it. But, you hear her therapist or boss or whatever say, no big changes, take it one step at a time. So you can tell she's recently lost someone and is thinking about just completely changing her life to try and make things better, sort of by running away from life. And then she's realizing that she's got some work to do on herself.
Right.
And I love that they introduced that idea, with the metaphor of the cactus or the begonia, saying that she's got to learn to nurture. And she's saying, well, what's wrong with having something that just doesn't need a lot? And he's like, everything needs a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think what's interesting about, I think, these two is that, they're two sides of the same coin, but there's absolutely just a better way to do this on all fronts. You don't want to be somebody who is basically codependent, and you also don't want to be on the other side where you're completely inaccessible. And, I think one of the things that this movie shows is the way in which these people help each other become better versions of themselves by supporting each other in and pushing each other to get outside their comfort zones, to grow as a person, right? In the end, Cole ends up actually going on trips with her as she's doing her spy thing, but he's doing the study work that he's always wanted to do for the book that he's been writing that got put on hold, and she's learning that there needs to be a work life and there needs to be a personal life balance. And so I thought, as cheesy as the movie is, it was doing a good job of actually showing a more healthy style of relationship, right? Where it's not everything to you, but the person actually helps you become a better person. And I thought that was really cool.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that they got that across so well. I love showing the constant back and forth of how you can have people that are complete opposites that somehow meet in the middle and enable each other to grow and step out of that version of themselves that wasn't working and was so limited before.
Right.
And I love that they focus as well on the aspect of their relationship of needing quote unquote us time, of just where you focus on the relationship and doing something with quality time together. That's important. And, in the beginning, I also felt that with him, Cole's character didn't really care who it was that he ended up with either. He was just interested in romanticizing everything to the point that it didn't matter who the girl was.
Right.
And that shows when he's first getting to know Sadie, and it seems like it's only going skin deep as far as how they get to know each other. You know, they spent one day together and suddenly he's
Right.
like, I think she's the one. And his sister is like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, I think, again, there are many people in this world who have been on that side of things and totally understand where that person's coming from, right? And so, and it was also kind of one of those things where I was actually really hoping they weren't going to sleep together at that point, because I felt like it would have made that even stronger. When you come away from having that type of day where you like all of a sudden fall into this thing where you want to spend all of your time getting to know this person, I think it would have actually helped almost their like sexual chemistry if they hadn't actually slept together, because that tension would have continued to build right throughout the movie. And so when everybody's like telling them they should get a room, right? They
could.
Yeah, exactly. It feels better in that. So, absolutely, I think, that would have been better. So I wanted to ask you, this movie, it has a very deliberate tone. I feel like it as throughout the film. And do you feel like that by kind of having this tone of somewhat lightheartedness and kind of like going for the action romantic comedy type of thing, do you feel like it keeps with that tone for the film throughout and it's consistent? Do you feel like it deviates? And, either way, do you feel like it ends up helping the movie that it kind of seems to have this tone?
Well, I think you can definitely tell in the way that some of the scenes are shot, and then also in the cameo appearances and things like that, which we'll get to later, that it is overall a more lighthearted action movie. The movie knows what it is and leans into kind of the campiness of everything. I'm thinking specifically of when she's driving the bus through Pakistan and the guys that she knocks off the truck are flying past the window in slow motion, and they're showing Chris Evans' face and then the guy's face juxtaposed. I will say I'm not really a fan of that tone, but I also don't think it's necessarily consistent, which actually hurts it. I think that there are times when they seem to really take certain moments, as they should, more seriously. And yet then they lean back into the campiness and the joke. And I think it cheapens the moments that you want to take a beat and soak in. Did you feel that way?
I mean, that's really interesting, because one of the things that I kind of turned to my wife and said after the film was over is, I felt like the tone felt pretty consistent the whole movie to me. It felt like they wanted it to kind of basically be a campy film, and it felt mostly like that was the tone throughout the entire thing. And I felt like that, just like even, in the beginning when they're meeting, like everything feels kind of like very tropey and everything. And then, when all the action sequence, like you're talking about, the fact that action sequences don't take themselves that seriously, right? Even the end action sequence is like that, this very, very over the top action sequence. And it felt very much like this movie felt like a late Roger Moore Bond film. Yeah,
I would say that. Yeah, like a parody of a Bond film almost.
Yeah. But I mean, for all the craziness that we would have seen in something like
Moonraker.
Exactly. Or View to a Kill, or just any of those that were just, ridiculous, right? And, not either of our favorites when it came to Bond films. So I think at the same time, I would say that this felt more consistent in the sense that this didn't feel like it went quite as far as those Roger Moore films did. You know, we weren't being over the top to the point where, you know, again, you mentioned Moonraker. We didn't go that far. Mm-hmm. So
this isn't Ana de Armas in space.
Exactly. Although, you know, I wouldn't mind seeing her as a space film. I think she could probably do it. So, yeah. I mean, that's really interesting to me, though, that, you know, you felt like it was less consistent. And the
reason I'll say why, just really quick, was specifically the beach scene when he saves her from the plane and they're sitting there with the parachute. When they have that moment by the fire and they lean in for the kiss, I think at any second someone's going to make another joke. Someone's going to get shot.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Like they're going to take the moment away from you.
Okay, yeah.
So it was like I couldn't really accept that it was actually going to happen.
I can definitely understand that, and I agree with you in that way because I'm glad that they didn't, right? Like those are moments where it's like they realized when to kind of lean into the ultra more camping nature of things and when to kind of withhold those, because the movie, you know, if it hadn't like had that moment specifically, I think the movie would have been worse if they hadn't allowed you to actually experience this moment where these characters have been through this major life and death experience. He's proved himself in a way to her that makes, I think, him seem like a completely different person in her mind, you know, or a person that she didn't expect in her mind. She thought she had this guy pinned down, and now, you know, this whole thing has happened, and it's like, whoa, you kind of see somebody in a new light. So yeah, I think without that moment specifically, gosh, this movie would have been, I think, all the worse for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need those moments of actual depth and character building, and not just constant jokes.
Yes, couldn't agree with you more. Which, you know, we've talked about many times is one of the things that has hurt many of Marvel movies, because they don't know when to stop. You know, so what did you think? You know, we had kind of basically our main villain throughout the film is Adrian Brody's arms dealer, and you know he's working for Mr. Utami, which, you know, does it really matter in these type of films? Do you think that the villain doesn't really matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely one where because of the style of movie that it is and everything, it kind of could have been any actor and worked fine. I will say I thought that his accent was much better than Tim Blake Nelson as the bug specialist that was torturing Chris Evans.
Yeah.
The Russian accent was really bad.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah. No,
I like him as an actor, but it just, yes. Don't do it.
Yeah. You know, I think Adrian Brody does well enough with the role, so I really didn't, you know, have too much of an issue with it. And again, like I said, it is interesting because like it's one of those places where it doesn't really feel like it matters. Whether they're really great. I mean, they're just terrible people, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and they're wanting to do terrible things, and that's kind of what you get from this type of movie. And I don't know if it would have helped the film itself be better if the villains had been better for what the main thrust of the movie is, which is about, you know, the characters that we have in, you know, Cole and Sadie being the main characters. Mm-hmm. So, Yeah. So this was also a film, Christy, where there were quite a few surprise cameos that happened, like Anthony Mackie or John Chu, Sebastian Stan, Ryan Reynolds all show up. How did you feel about, them being the bounty hunters after these two?
I mean, you could definitely tell the casting choices were intentional because of the campy style of the movie. They were really leaning into that trope of other action movies where there's a million different bad guys that are all after the same gains coming after the stars. It
almost felt like
fan of it.
John Wick type of thing where everybody's an assassin.
Yeah, exactly. So they were just leaning into that, which I get, but I didn't love it because I wanted more depth. I think just overall the tone is not my thing, but it also I think didn't work for me because it felt like it was a mix of a Marvel movie part 2. Casting those specific actors all together in the same movie, it felt like you're just saying, oh, this is Captain America, Winter Soldier, Falcon 2.0.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it would have been funnier and more interesting if they had cast different people rather than those people that have already done such big budget films together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you feel that way?
Well, I think it was funny that the first time that it happened, and
like Anthony Mackie, and then stop there.
And I think it might have been funny if the Sebastian Stan character had been the only other one. But it did kind of get to the point to which it seemed like too much and a little bit over the top, I think, when it came to the idea of doing the cameos. And then it was also strange as well because those, except for Bryan Reynolds, the other three are like get out of situation cards, where they're used to take out another person, which allows something, our characters to get away, and that was a little bit frustrating to me, actually. I don't know why that needed to be the case, and so I think that's where they really started to take away from the situation. Instead of just being funny, they just became this thing that, oh, well, we need the characters to be able to get away from what's going on here. And so we'll just add in another, cameo that basically, another bounty hunter that allows them to be able to have the other bounty hunter killed and gives them the upper hand. And it was kind of frustrating, I think, at that point. So,
well, and I think especially too, if you throw in John Cho, everyone knows the most famous thing he is known for is Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, which is immediately like you're thinking, okay, what's the joke here? Yeah. You can't take him seriously as soon as you see his face. It's like casting Kumail Nanjiani.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more.
That he's usually there for the joke. So in Eternals, I was really confused.
yeah, exactly. No, I think you're 100% right on that. We did talk a little bit about this, but I wanted to ask you, because this is an action film, specifically what you actually thought of the action in the movie. Did it work for you at all? Was it, well done? What'd you end up thinking?
So I actually thought that a real strength here was the fight scenes. The choreography was very realistic and gritty and done well. I think actually maybe Ana de Armas had some training, and it looked cool. I think obviously the plane scene was a little ridiculous, but it was supposed to be, I'm thinking of them coming back together and bringing the codes and everything. And they didn't even show the actual getting from the plane to the ground, which was weird to me. It felt like I was missing something. In an action movie, you kind of want to see the action of them falling.
Yeah, I could totally understand what you're saying, although I with the budget this movie probably had and did have, I don't think I would have wanted to see it because it probably wouldn't have looked good.
Right, it just didn't have the budget there.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think, like you said, that some of the action sequences with the fight scenes, especially Ana de Armas, like you said, I think she's obviously been, upping her game when it comes to that for all the movies that she's been in recently. So I think she did a really good job and made me very excited actually to see the film that she's going to be in, Ballerina, in the John Wick universe. I think that's going to be fantastic. I think there were some other not so great action sequences when it came to like the bus chase thing and some of that stuff where it just doesn't look as great as you would want it to. But, some of it looked a little bit better than some of the Marvel movies I've seen recently. So, in the end, I think it was a little bit more of a mixed bag. And so, it was okay. I don't think it was one of those movies where it really stood out to me at all in that way. So, what did you think too? Something you had mentioned to me that stood out, which was funny because normally I'm the one where it stands out, but you mentioned the music, and so what was it about the music that really stood out to you here?
That it was lazy, to be honest. Lorne Balfe did the music here, and I felt that overall it just seemed very lacking in imagination or anything unique. And that's something, especially having, recently watched another Guardians movie, that I really pick up on a lot is now, looking back and seeing how that was something Gunn was really known for with Guardians 1 and 2, was how expertly he matched either the lyrics or the tone of the songs to the action in the scenes they're used. And here, it just felt so much like somebody picked current popular songs and one or two throwbacks that didn't really matter in the scenes they were thrown into. It was just filler music.
Right.
And it could have been anything. And you're like, okay, I mean, I've heard My Sharona a million times. I love the song, but it wasn't needed for the scene. And same thing for Are You Gonna Be My Girl? It was like, look at her fight. She's awesome. Are you gonna be my girl? And you're like, yeah, okay, we get it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that all of those are just really good points. I think there were some fun choices in there, but I think overall, nothing really stood out to me or, felt as though it was as well thought out as you would have wanted it to be. And like you said too, like it's not a lot of surprises there. And so, calling it, I don't, maybe not lazy, but I think I might just call it just uninspired, right? There wasn't anything in there where you're thinking, wow, somebody really went through a bunch of songs and, thought about this, and, tried to make it fit for this film and make it feel unique to this film. It just felt like stuff that had been used in other movies, and worked in other movies and thought, oh, well, it'll work here. And so it wasn't like, I felt like somebody had put a lot of effort into it.
And I mean, that is one point that I've said in talking about this movie is perhaps there are things here that we didn't like that were intentional choices because of the tone that they wanted to go for.
Yeah.
But we just didn't like them.
Yeah. No, couldn't agree with you more. I can't wait then, after the conversation so far, Christy, just to see what you're going to end up rating Ghosted.
So I think that it had a few things going for it, but that overall it felt a little too uninspired and campy for my taste and not really memorable. And I think, honestly, if they had gone for a new theme for some of the characters or situations, music wise, that might have added something, or tried to add something to it to make it stand out more. I think when you make a movie, you still want it to make money. So rewatchability could be a big factor. So I think that there are just some choices they could have made that would have made it much more interesting and memorable. I did like that. I just wanted to throw out, there was some filming locations in Atlanta, Georgia. The fountain with the giant orb coming down from the ceiling was the Atlanta Marriott Marquis. Their little, circle where people pull up to check in.
Yep. Been there many times.
Then, right. Yeah. For Dragon Con. And then the Polaris revolving restaurant. Obviously it doesn't spin that fast for real, but, it does revolve. So thought that was cool. And just wanted to throw out, there was a Star Wars cameo. Tia Sircar.
There was. Absolutely. No,
on
I
the
saw
lie
that
detector.
Too. I was like, I pointed that out to my wife. I was like, hey, do you know who that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
So there were some fun things, but, overall, I just felt like it was a little bit too jokey for me for, I think that it needed to have some more in-depth moments to make it more interesting and less derivative feeling, I guess, ultimately, I'll say. So I give it a 2 out of 5 revolving restaurants because I just wanted more and I needed better chemistry from the two main actors.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I think coming out of the film, I was feeling a little bit better about it. But in all honesty, just the more that I thought about the film and the more that we talked about it, I definitely am. I think it's fine. It's just not great. And I think that's the place that I kind of end up with it. And so I'm going to say that this is 3 out of 5 stars. It's mildly entertaining. It's somewhat goofy and fun. And I think there's some enjoyment here for sure. But overall, I think, you're right on target in the sense that it felt like if you had put just a little bit more effort into this film, that it really could have been something more special, right? And I think that's the thing that we get here, is it just doesn't really feel special. It just feels like a lot of other things that we've seen before. I think especially in streaming movies, right, you do want to have things stand out. And I don't think that this one stands out enough. And that's just too bad. Maybe we'll hit some streaming movies this year that stand out more. And I think we will, because we've got some that are going to be coming out with some big names. So I'm interested to see where we go with those. But Christy, it's now that time of the show where we do our recommendations. And so what would you like to recommend to everybody this week?
So I'm excited about my recommendation this week because it is something new I finally got to see. It actually came out last year, so it's relatively new, but it's called The Invitation. And it is a movie that came out in theaters originally. It's now on Netflix for a while and stars Thomas Doherty and Natalie Emmanuel, who you may be familiar with if you watched Game of Thrones. And it's a revival of Bram Stoker's Dracula, but with a little bit of a modern twist to it. But really great thriller to watch, but it's not leaning horribly into the horror genre. So I think, Matt, you would still enjoy it.
Okay.
And I like that they don't ever use the word vampire in the dialogue.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It's very implied, and a lot of things are teased but not shown till toward the end. So it's very interesting. It's definitely got that old-fashioned dark vampire gothic vibe, and the set design and the costuming was beautiful.
Nice.
So I recommend people check out The Invitation on Netflix, because if you like vampire movies, you will like this.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm going to recommend something that is also on Apple TV for everyone. It's called Still, and it is about Michael J. Fox. It is his story about his life, and especially with dealing with his Parkinson's disease, and how his life has progressed since then, and just kind of an autobiographical documentary with him. It's so good, and it's such an inspiring story too. His wife and his relationships is just one of the coolest, most amazing things you'll ever see. And it's such a testament to what true love really looks like. And I was just bowled over by how good this was. And so I cannot recommend this more highly, that people check this out, because it's fantastic. But Christy, if people wanted to see what else you've got going on these days, what else you're doing, where would they find you?
Of course, you can find me on Letterboxd, Instagram, and Twitter at Bespin Bell, and in the Babel Conference on Facebook. And then, when I'm not here, I did do a show called Sabers and Spells on the Skywalking Through Neverland Network with my friends Amanda and Teresa. And what about you?
Well, you could find me all over social media under the name MattRushing02. Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Vero are the best places to find me. You can also find me, of course, here on the network outside the 602 Club with literary tracks about the books and the comics of Star Trek. The Orb, we're doing our 30th anniversary rewatch of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Warp 5, we've got our 20th anniversary rewatch of Star Trek Enterprise going on. Saddle Up is about to return here in June as the second season of Strange New Worlds starts, and then The Artificial Tango just finished Star Trek Picard Season 3, and we'll have more coming for that show for you soon, so check all of that out. And then over on the Nerd Party, there are two different shows. One is called Owl Post, which was with Drea Kaufman, and we did every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time, as well as Aggressive Negotiations, a Star Wars podcast I do with the great John Mills. But thank you so much for joining us.
And y'all come back now, you hear?
Thank you.